An excavator is a powerful machine designed for digging, lifting, and precision work on a wide range of job sites. You'll commonly see excavators used in construction, roadwork, trenching, and demolition projects. With its rotating upper structure and long boom and arm, the excavator can work in multiple directions without needing to reposition its tracks. This makes it especially effective for digging trenches, foundations, and working in tight or complex areas. Excavators are built for control and accuracy. Operators use coordinated movements to handle materials, shape terrain, and work safely around structures, utilities, and other workers. A wide range of attachments can also be used, allowing the machine to take on tasks like braking, lifting, and grading. In this lesson, we'll walk through a full safety inspection and introduce the basic controls needed to operate an excavator safely and effectively.
So before we start the excavator, one of the first things we do is check it over, and we can start right here at the business end of it. So we want to make sure our teeth have plenty of life left. If they get too short, they'll get into the shank. The shank is part of the bucket that the teeth slide onto, and then there's a pin that holds the tooth to the shank. Now, if the tooth wears down too far, it'll wear into the shank of the bucket, and eventually you'll have to replace the whole shank, which involves a whole lot of torching and welding and new parts. So we try to pay attention to our teeth and the wear on them. Other things we look at on the bucket are welds around the quick attach, or the bucket attaches to the boom, to the stick. So yeah, one of the weakest points on the excavator is where your bucket attaches to the stick. And if you're in really hard material, the metal can crack around the welds. So you want to go over your machine before you start it up and just kind of examine everything, all these points, and make sure you don't have any cracks or weak spots in your bucket. Because you could be working away and you might peel the bucket right off the machine, and that's not a good scenario. So also, while we're here, we also need to grease all of our pins. There's a lot of moving parts at this end of the machine, and they get a lot of use. They're in constant motion. So if you don't want to be replacing pins and bushings all the time, you got to make sure it's properly greased. So another thing we want to look for is to make sure none of our track pads are loose. Maybe you'll notice once you start moving the machine, you'll see if the dirt looks really loose, and you can see around the bolt heads if the pads are loose. You want to make sure you get those tightened up or replaced, because it can wear out your undercarriage quicker. Another thing, the teeth on the drive sprockets, you want to make sure you've got plenty of life on those, because once they start to wear down and the teeth start to recede too far, it's harder on the undercarriage and the final drives. So we pay attention to that stuff. We check our rollers, especially in the wintertime when things are frozen, because when you get clay and mud jammed up in your rollers, they have a tendency to want to stick. And what'll happen if this roller doesn't move and your tracks are moving, you'll wear a flat spot in your roller and you'll destroy your rollers and the bushings. So there's also rollers on the bottom. You want to make sure there's no grease or fluid coming out of them, and that everything looks tight. You don't want to see any funny looking gaps or loose parts. So here's our batteries and the radiator and cooling system. Also, the air filter is right there. Now occasionally there'll be a master disconnect for the battery on an excavator as well, which would be right there. But on this machine, we just leave it alone. So it's very easy to slip and fall when climbing up on an excavator. So always try to maintain your 3 points of contact. So climbing up. one hand on the track if you have to, one on the handle. And take your time. You don't want to slip and have a fall. It's a good way to hurt yourself. So as you can see, there's steps to get up to the engine compartment. We open up the latches on the hood. So once we get the hood open, we can check the motor oil, pull out our dipstick, make sure we're in the proper zone for our fill mark. Here's our oil fill, and here's our radiator reservoir. Once you've checked everything, we can carefully close the hood. All right, so right down here behind the boom of the excavator is our swing motor. Now that's the hydraulic pump that helps with the rotation of the machine that makes the excavator spin around. And there's a dipstick right there, and you pull that out to check the level of your oil. You always want to make sure it's at the proper level. All right. So with the excavator, try to maintain our 3 points of contact when we're climbing up in. 1, 2, 3. Yep. All right, once we are up in the excavator, we can turn the key ahead, wait for everything to come on. Now we should be good to start. We let the machine warm up for a couple minutes. Then we reach down and release basically our parking brake here on the left. Once we flip that up, we should be able to move the machine. But first, we check our gauges, our fuel level, our hydraulic temperature, and our radiator temperature. We make sure everything's in the green and good to operate. Next, we can idle the machine up. This lever on the right lifts the boom, which is the big arm on the excavator. You pull back on the boom and it raises it. Push forward on the lever and it lowers it. Side to side controls your bucket. So to the right opens your bucket. Bring it to the left, closes your bucket. So up, down, and bucket control. The lever on your left controls the stick, which is the part of the boom that's attached to the bucket. Push it out to reach out away from you. Pull it in to pull the arm in. Side to side controls your swing motion. So if you want to swing to the left, move to the left. If you want to swing to the right, move to the right. Now forward and backward and side to side movement with the undercarriage is controlled with these two levers at your feet, and can also be controlled with your feet. So if we want to go backwards, our orientation is the side with the sprockets are backwards. It's the rear of your machine. And we pull back on the levers to go that direction. The side of the undercarriage with just the idler is your forward direction.
That's good.
So depending on your orientation, forward can be backwards, if that makes any sense. Because now that I'm swung around behind the sprockets, I need to pull back on the levers to go ahead. Now if I want to turn, I just let up on one of the levers and it goes that direction. So let's see if we can get a hold of one of these rocks and pick it up with the thumb. So in order to use the thumb on this machine, there's two buttons on the right joystick. Push down on one to close the thumb. Make sure you have a good grip on the rock before you lift it up. Apply pressure with the bucket against the thumb. And then you can place it where you want it. Let's try another one.
Take it.
Always make sure you have pressure on whatever you're trying to lift up so it doesn't accidentally fall out of your buckets. Once you've parked, put the bucket on the ground, turn down your throttle, and apply the parking brake. Give the machine a few moments to cool down before turning off the power.